Today's Global Intelligence Agency Operations Report. We know our financial system was based on debt, but whose debts are we paying anyway? Massive changes are underway, and it's in our favor. The deep state has been very busy setting up big meetings for October 1st, as almost 1,000 generals, admirals, and high-ranking military from around the world gather for a major planning event. And big shifts and changes may have felt a bit bumpy over the last several days. This has to do with the dying of the dark forces. As they gasp for air, they are trying to cling to the energy of humanity to buy themselves some time.
Tired before the day begins? NAD Plus levels drop 50% after 40. NAD Plus helps your cells bounce back fast. Most supplements give precursors. NAD Plus skips the breakdown, delivering direct, bioavailable power. Support your energy, metabolism, sleep, and stress levels at the cellular level. Join the NAD Plus revolution. Start your journey to a healthier you. Subscribe today.
Well, it's been an interesting time since the last we spoke. And tonight I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes, at least the best I can, and there'll be more information that will come out that is based on the last few days, probably through the course of this week. Otherwise, this is going to be a really, really long report. We are undergoing some major changes, and we have been hitting it pretty hard over here every single day. I mean, not that we haven't before, but every single day they lose something else. And by something, I don't mean just one thing. It's usually 10 things, 20 things, 30 things, and they are scrambling on their side. As we talk tonight, getting all kinds of messages there. You know, it is hitting the fan. Big time for them, but in a good way for us. So lots to report tonight. I think I'll start with a little bit of, regular news and maybe a couple of little notes from me. First, I wanted to say thank you to everyone who sent me birthday wishes and video cards, and it was just lovely to see all of you, and there was a little bit of comic relief in there, so thank you so much. I appreciate that. My birthday was, well, a working day for me. You know, we couldn't let up on the gas pedal even for a day, but you know, just on a side note, there was cake, and it was pineapple coconut, and you guys know how much I love pineapple and coconut together, so it was a lovely birthday cake, and, you know, there was a little bit of time, I guess you would say, for an hour or so, and, you know, where I just ate some cake. Sometimes you just got to do that, and I'm sure you know. So it was nice. It was a nice birthday, full of progress on our part as we edge ever closer to the end of the way things were and the beginning of the way things will be. Now, as for canceling the live report that I was going to do on Friday, it was a pretty rough day. It started on Thursday and it continued on, and I'll go into the details of that too. But you could say what happened in a nutshell is we pulled a power plug on Thursday night. And by power plug, I guess you would say some major sources of power, not only for systems and tied to our financial system, but also power plugs that affected them personally because they really need that dark energy. They really need an energy source that makes their bloodlines run. And the energy is, well, it's waning, and sources of it are becoming few and far between as we, the humans, or the Homo sapiens, are becoming inaccessible to them. So now they're scrambling all around the planet looking for those power sources. And unfortunately, I am about 50 miles from one of the locations that they focus on. Therefore, I took the brunt of that on Friday. It was a pretty rough day, to say the least, as they try to power, I guess, themselves and systems from my person. That was just awesome. But we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a bit. And we'll get to some regular news. For all of you who have been watching, there have been some big changes in the world that we're starting to see in mainstream media. One of those changes was the president of the Mormon Church died on Saturday night at 101 years old. Now, we've told you a lot about the Mormon Church, and the Mormon Church and the Vatican are kind of go neck and neck as it relates to evil things that happen in this world. And, well, that guy had died a little bit ago, but apparently he died now publicly. So there's going to be a little bit of upset and some movement around power positions within the church, just like when a pope dies in the Catholic Church. It's kind of the same. You know, there's all these rituals that take place in strange rooms. And, well, they're looking for a new leader over there. Probably one, let's just say, maybe there'll be one that's a Homo sapien this time. Who knows? But can't say that we were sad to see that one go. Another event that's happening, and there's a lot of news and talk about, is the UN General Assembly meeting. Behind the scenes, I have told you that they have been discussing the fact that the UN is broke. It's going to be a ghost town. That assembly meeting officially ended today, and it's becoming a ghost town over there at the UN with no funding. But of course, you know, there's a lot of promises and big things they think that are going to happen over the next few days, and, well, they won't. Everybody's going to be in the same position that they are now, probably worse, if they are still upright. Also, loads of reports of people gone missing during that meeting. Some high-ranking people that often pull the strings behind the scenes are not available anymore, and they're going to have a hard time making a phone call to those people, as progress is being made rapidly. Now, interesting information that has come out of this meeting is that Trump apparently and the UN signed a peace accord, allegedly. Now, this peace accord, much like all other United Nations accords, has what I call a Santa Claus in it. It's that clause hidden deep within that paperwork that basically tells everybody that we're going digital. That means you too, as a human being, are going digital. You would be controlled by an ID system, which is another thing that has been steadily disabled, let's just say. It's very similar to the Barcode of Life Initiative. If you've never heard of it, you can go ahead and look that up on the internet. But the Barcode for Life Initiative allegedly talks about promoting life and monitoring life on the planet, and that's not really true. This barcode would be tied to your ID, and by identification, I don't mean your driver's license or your passport. This would be more tied to everything that you do. You would become a number to them, kind of like cattle. You would be tagged just like cattle. You know, they talk about microchipping and all of these things. This all can be done etherically. It doesn't necessarily have to be you showing up at some place and accepting their chip in your hand, you know, like they tell us about and, you know, conspiracy theories. Not at all. You've had that chip actually for a long, long time, or had it. And it was definitely tied not only to the financial system, but pretty much everything you say and do is monitored by various AI systems because you are an asset, or you were. And so this initiative was promoted for peace. You know, they'd like to have peace. I don't know, peace with who? Peace and quiet, take a peace. You know, the UN is, I call them the take a peace forces over there. But there are a lot of hidden clauses in there regarding central bank digital currencies which are being heavily promoted by the Trump administration. Now, we all know Donald Trump, or whatever that is, walking around as, the President of the United States. We also know him as a high-ranking member of the Order of the Black Sun. We know him as a frequenter of various islands where small children also frequent, let's just say. We also know him as a person that is heavily involved in a lot of dark, nefarious activities, along with his best buddy there, the demon guy we call Elon Musk. And by that, I mean, he's a guy that his babysitter readily admitted on our channel in an interview that he plays with demons as a young kid. Still does to this day. Never quite gave that up. So during this General Assembly, there has now been a new board formed. It is formed for peace, allegedly, in the Middle East. Trump has self-appointed himself the president of this board, and other fine folk have joined him on this board, namely Tony Blair, which, if you've been following kind of alternative media for a while, you probably know is another Satanist pig. And there are many others that have joined on this board, which are all part of the same ilk. Now, this, in accordance to this 20-point plan, would actually make Trump the president of the Gaza Strip, or Palestine, until the Palestinian formed government could actually take over or be in a position to run the country. Now, no one really has interfered with this in a long time, but somehow Trump thinks he's going to make everything better. Probably not. He also has appointed Jared Kushner, or whoever that is these days, to also be on this board. Wow, what a magnificent crew they've got going on over there. And unfortunately for the people of Gaza, this is your new interim government council. I'm so sorry to the people of Gaza. Really, I am. Apparently, we're probably going to see some investment, from what I understand, because Trump is now handling all financial affairs of the Gaza Strip. Now, there's a little bit more to that story, and I know that you were expecting that, I'm sure. Now, I know quite a bit about Palestine and the Gaza Strip, and of course there's gas and minerals and things of that nature there. But did you know that for many, many years, Bush Sr., in his position, not as president, but as Black Eagle, or head of the Order of the Black Sun, also donated a lot of money every year to the Gaza Strip? Now, that was meant for protests and to keep the fight going between the Gaza Strip and the Israelis. And the Israelis were also funded by the same Black Eagle Trust. If you've been around for a while, you've probably heard about Black Eagle Trust. I personally hold a copy of the Black Book in which all the accounts were listed. Also had full access to all those accounts too. And, some of them existed, some of them didn't exist, but when you have full access to something, you pretty much can do whatever you want. And in this case, I hit a lot of delete buttons. I don't think the delete button, on the Golden Age AI, or even Alpha, because I've been doing that for a long time, it was probably going to work anymore. It's all worn out due to the amount of deleting of that trust. However, there's a lot of rumors going around about Bush Sr. right now. And some of those rumors are that there is a trust, a war chest, if you will, that he controlled. And they believe that by October 1st, so by Wednesday, they will have access to this trust. Now, this has caused quite a bit of interesting activity to happen. But part of the reason why they are saying that Palestine, and Trump is going to be the new president of Palestine, is because of this little war chest and funding that used to be allocated every single year to Gaza Strip and Palestine. Now, they haven't gotten any of that money since about 2007. However, it's been building up in fake numbers on a screen for quite a long time now. So that's a lot of money. And of course, the big fat orange thing that's in the White House wants to control it. Sorry for my negative talk about these people these days, because it's just ridiculous. I mean, it really is. They are just ridiculous these days. But anyway, so he feels he can get his hands on this 10 billion plus per annum that was allocated since 2007, which was the last time any money came out. And he's going to use that money to initiate this 12-point peace plan with a board of probably the worst people in the world. So if you're from Gaza, and I'm really sorry, I'm sorry this happened. But the good news is that there are going to be some changes that are going to happen, and I highly doubt this will go much further than a bunch of press. Within about 48 hours, you can probably stick a fork in that, because they're not going to be able to perform what they plan on performing. Now, speaking of performance, more rumors are going around here. So there are somewhere between 800 to 1,000 generals, admirals, and other high-ranking military and intelligence officials from around the world that have been invited to a meeting in Washington, D.C. This meeting is due to occur by Wednesday. It was supposed to occur tomorrow. And they have delayed that meeting until Wednesday. Now, they're citing that the reason for the delay is there are certain people that are due to attend this meeting that can't quite make it on time. Now, I don't believe that. And quite frankly, these people don't even know they can't make it on time, because the ones that are being cited when confronted or asked why they can't make it, they said, I don't know what you're talking about. I can make it. It's just a liar's club over there right now. But the reason for this whole meeting is because they are planning on declaring global martial law in an effort to achieve peace. There's a lot of problems with this one here, guys, because, those Trump operatives, they're political operatives. They are not financial folk. I know a lot of them believe that they participated in the economic downfall of, for example, the Soviet Union, or other operations and coups that involved a financial downfall of a country. But that really wasn't the case. They just happened to be there on the ground. They rang 2 or 3 bells, and there were 1,000 other bells that were ringing in the background by varying folk, oftentimes Marduk and others, that would actually make the operation run. But because they don't understand the inner workings of financial systems, they all, including the Jesuit order and other military-type orders, are all believing a lie. They believe that this war chest, which was born out of the Black Eagle Trust, which has been around for a long period of time, they believe that this money is moving around the world in an off-ledger type way. Now, in reality, what is actually happening is they are looking at a bunch of mirrors. A bunch of mirrors that come from several different places that we have already been. And by a mirror, it is merely a reflection of numbers on a screen with no allocation numbers at all. If a digital form of cash, and I'm not talking about crypto here necessarily, I'm talking about cash that you would see if you were to log in online in your bank account and you see your balance, that is cash. So that's a digital form of cash, also known as M1 in a lot of parts of the world. That's what they're seeing. But there's no allocation numbers, however, on any of those accounts, which means that it's just numbers on a screen. Be like if you made yourself a nice spreadsheet on your home laptop or computer and put Citibank and Bank of America and JP Morgan Chase and varying banks in the Cayman Islands, and I'm giving you all these locations for a reason. And you put $100 billion in the balance line. Now, could you go to any of those banks and spend that money? No, you can't, because it's not real and the bank doesn't recognize it's real. And the same thing will actually happen when they try to use any of these mirrors. Many, many, many of these mirrors and the actual originating locations here and elsewhere in AI systems have gone away over the course of the last 4 or 5 days. Many, and I mean thousands of any type of these alleged illicit almost was funds in every country in the world have gone away. Now, this is just part of the dismantling of a debt system, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a second here. But back to regular news. So in the regular news, all these generals have been shown these fake mirrors, and they all believe that these funds are going to be made available to them in this meeting. Now, originally that meeting was tomorrow. So they believed that they are going to attend this huge planning meeting because they have all been told individually that they are going to be the heads of their respective countries under global martial law. And as head of their respective countries, they, of course, would also be in charge of all the financial dealings of said countries. Yeah. Well, they may have found out today that those mirrors aren't real, nor do a lot of them exist anymore. Anyway, they're just either numbers on a screen or a bunch of papers they made at some copy place somewhere. And it's a little chaotic out there right now. Now, will this meeting actually take place? I don't know. Some of them have already arrived here in the States, and, they've been having their little sidebar meetings talking about all of their power and their positions, that they're going to have. Unfortunately, if you've got 1,000 people and there are maybe 10 positions or 9 positions or even 17 in some cases, they love that number, 17. Or even 17 or so positions. All 1,000 people have been sworn to secrecy not to tell anybody that they have one of those positions. It's like a game of generals playing musical chairs. And by playing, they're being played like a top by their own people. So there's going to be a lot of disappointed people come this week. Come Wednesday, then they will push that date off until the 6th if they can, because remember, this time of year, on the new moon, started the family meetings, and all of the contracts to operatives and war dogs and all of those people would then come out. The money would start flowing around the full moon, which is October 6th, I believe. At least it is here in the States. And so they might try to push it off until then. But the leaders of this lying game are actually discussing putting everyone off until October 1st. Now, I listened to some of the ways they believe they're going to explain this to these generals. And it sounds to me if you're kind of like me, you always up late or, early in, We sleep sometimes, you don't sleep. But if you remember kind of doing this back in the 90s, you'll remember those terrible infomercials. Remember those? I don't even know if they still have infomercials. We're all into streaming now these days. But if they do, all of a sudden your TV goes up about 10 decibels, maybe higher. I don't know. And, whatever show happens to be kind of playing quietly in the background, all of a sudden is overtaken by the Ginsu knife commercial. You know the one. Or how about Sounds of the 70s, or, buy all of these, at one point it was cassette tapes and then it went into CDs and you can listen to all your favorite hits. However, these people all of a sudden start screaming at you. It doesn't matter what the volume is on your TV. So these people have been working on their own version of the Ginsu knife commercial, and they're going to promise them that, they're going to buy a few days and get a few free, and then we're going to increase the amount of power, and you'll get extra money, and you'll get the bamboo basket, and along with it, and this is how it's going to go, and, and if you act now, and you commit to the 21st of October, I'm just kidding. I mean, no, but seriously, that's not how they sound, because they're going to try to weasel their way out of this. But you see, we've already made this information public in what you would call a whisper campaign around D.C. and, of course, in other countries around the world. And everybody's figuring out there are no accounts. There is no Bush War Fund. There is no money. There is nothing behind these Trump people. And they have already confirmed with their colleagues that they are going to be pushed off until the 21st of October. You see, the reason why is because, well, I guess it's another full moon or new moon or who knows. I don't know what's on that day. But they also believe that this equinox time will last until the 21st of October or a full 30-day period after the equinox. Well, that is not the case. Most of them are watching as things dwindle. Power dwindles, financial system changes rapidly happening in rapid fire. I mean rapid fire. And power centers being pulled, and, they're starting to figure out that threat of having a chip in their head is not real anymore, and they can't control them or switch them off with that chip, and that we were right, and that doesn't work anymore. They also are touting whatever anybody wants to hear. So they're telling, for example, the Jesuit order, because a lot of those people are, we're with Jesus and we deserve to run the world and we know everything and that kind of thing. And, so they're putting out a lot of religious things too, not only within the circles, the inner circles of those that are in the religious sector. They are also putting out a lot of information about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which is also to occur on Wednesday. I think it starts on the evening of Wednesday and ends on October 2nd. They're putting out information about a rapture that was due to occur earlier this week. Apparently, we were all going somewhere, or not this week, sorry, last week, and that didn't quite work out. We're all still here, so that's good. Welcome back for all of you that were not picked up by the rapture train. They're talking about the second coming of Christ and all kinds of things. And, well, times are changing. And, the Christ within you is definitely returning for many different reasons. We'll talk about that a bit too. But as far as these meetings are concerned, we're not expecting a whole lot, except for some weird operative infomercial and another act now on this date kind of thing. And, well, I don't think people are going to buy it much longer. They know that the power structure is waning. And, they're probably just going to go by the wayside. And true to form, what I'm expecting to happen is when Trump and et al., the Trump operatives, have another huge failure, then it will be the Chinese coming back and trying to take over the world again. So It's half over here and half over there, and then they go another round. But the good news is we are no longer the kids in the middle of the divorce. And we're not going to be tossed around anymore by a bunch of crazy people or semi-people. So, back, I guess you would say, to discuss what's been happening to you and what's been happening for you. And, well, why we had to cancel the live. Honestly, it was all about power. And by power, I don't necessarily mean, we are the head of state. We are the king of the world or anything like that type of power. But there are certain things that power the debt system. Every single thing in the world that you do that affects you is tied to the financial system. I cannot stress to you how much information we have found out and how many things that were tied to that financial system. You probably also noticed since the last time we talked that you almost feel out of breath sometimes, and then it lasts for a short period of time, and then everything goes back to normal. I've had people tell me that they felt like they couldn't breathe for a short period of time, and that could be because, well, they're trying to steal your breath using some kind of aspect of the financial system, and the fact that you are an asset of that system. This is how they feel anyway. Well, others are talking about energy drains, what felt like, attacks on their person, pains randomly, things happening and then getting better, a lot of anxiety, a lot of feelings of being trapped. That was the other thing that someone had said to me too. And all of these are due to the waning power of not only their persons, but of systems. So I want to take a minute and talk about power and how they function, because this is actually important. The next time you want to pick up some mainstream media crazy, or you want to watch what's going on at different places in the world, whether it's true or not, and you don't want to be the subject of these types of attacks that they do and black magic that they do, and how to kind of defend yourself, during the time of transition here, which is moving very, very fast, by the way. Understand this. There are people in this world that have gone very, very dark. In order for their bodily systems to function, they must have dark energy. And it's not just your dark energy, it's also fear, other types of dark etherium. They must have that consciousness. They must have that, and they must have a way to siphon it from you. Now, ways that they generate that. You might have noticed there have been some shootings, quite a few of them lately. And one of them was in Michigan, and I'm aware of that. It happened at a Mormon church there, and there are some people that died, and they're definitely plastering the news with these types of things. Now, the reason why they must do this, the Charlie Kirk situation, all the other things you're hearing in the news, the reason why they actually have to do this in order to survive at this point is because you are generating an enormous amount of fear, hate, anger. Who do we blame this on? Think about how you feel when you see those reports. Oh my gosh, this was down the street from me in Middle America. How did this happen? When you generate all of this focus and power on these people, if there is any bit of the debt system left, they don't have to do anything but take that dark energy that you are now generating, that fearful energy, that angry energy, that hate, and they just absorb it straight through the financial system. I know that sounds crazy. It's not like a debit card. It's not like a credit card, but it runs the whole backside of the financial system. And by backside, I mean the real part where they buy and sell. Now, without this energy and without the ability to siphon it off your person as a willing participant in financial affairs, they will not survive. They literally will die, and many have died. Now, what happened on Thursday night was critical, really, because they do have have had other power sources, which then gives them the ability to do the things that they do to us. Now, one of those main power sources, or stolen breath, from one of the original Machisel decks, because we've had many. Yes, the person you know as Jesus or Christ was one of those people, but there have been many that have come and gone for hundreds of thousands of years here. And the first one that they managed to capture was put in captivity. Now, the being no longer is there, meaning the person is obviously no longer alive, but they managed to, and now this was done not by human beings, so this was not done by your deep state by any stretch of the imagination. Technology was far more advanced at that time, and it was done by a bunch of beings that really knew what they were doing, and they were not people. So this being, the breath was extracted from this being, and it was held in a place called North Sentinel Island, which is an island that belongs to India. It's an interesting little island if you want to do some research on it, but it's inhabited only by a tribe that has chosen to live in isolation. Anyone comes near that island, they will kill you. It is heavily defended by this tribe. The tribe is well aware of the activities that happen on this island that are not of an earthly nature, meaning they know what's there. They know that there are beings there as well that protect it. You know, you've heard of stories like Skinwalker Ranch and other places in the, where weird and strange things happen, not only in the United States, but elsewhere. Well, this is one of those places where you have a lot of weird and strange non-humans floating around to protect a power source. That breath has been kept in a certain way, or was kept in such a certain way where they could use it continuously as a source of power. Now, we were like, oh, look at that. That doesn't need to happen. Not at all. It doesn't need to power those weird quantum AI dark systems, and it certainly doesn't need to power these deep state people at all and their overlays and black energy and all of the other things it was kind of used to power. So we thought, well, gee, we really need to take that out. And take that out we did. Breath was returned to source where it originally belonged. It was no longer kept there in a captive type way. And, well, that's when all hell started to break loose. Horribly. All night long on Thursday and all day long on Friday, because they knew it was a matter of time. So after several hours of absolutely no sleep, then we moved on from there to finding what it was connected to, because we're like, okay, so I can understand it's tied to financial affairs, both of normal human type financial affairs, and it's tied to other locations and other AI systems, and these people to some degree or another. But, of course, there were other places connected to it, and some interesting things too. So I'm going to give you some highlights because there's a lot that was connected to this when we pulled the plug, hence complete and total chaos, you would say, that has occurred over the last several days, Friday being one of those days. So we continued on working throughout the night and also into all day Friday till there was nothing left. But on Friday, we found a major connection between this North Sentinel Island off the coast of India and Silverton, Colorado. Now, we found something interesting that we could actually see now that the main power source was pulled, which looked kind of like an eagle's nest. You ever wonder why they call the members of the Order of the Black Sun the Eagles? In some cases, the Falcon and Falcon accounts and that type of thing. You've probably heard those names before. But there was a second mirrored version of this breath. Now, there were other locations too, but this was a secondary major mirror. Now, the deep state loves their mirrors. They love to do things in reverse, and there's a lot of reasons for that because everything on the other side is actually done in the reverse. So we ended up pulling that one too. And that sent everybody into a really big tizzy. So that was done probably early Friday morning. And then they were desperately looking for another power source of breath. And unfortunately, yours truly was that power source, at least they thought, and definitely wanted it to be. But they did everything they could to literally suck the life force from me on that day. Didn't care about how hard they pushed. But, I've got my own defense mechanisms, and that's not going to happen here. Not at all. Several of you have also experienced this because there were still, at that time, parts of the system that allowed you to be an asset. Therefore, they could control all the parts of that asset. It's kind of like controlling the milk of the cow. Whether it's in the cow or out of the cow, they can control the milk. So this is where the odd frequencies happened, weird feelings of breathlessness happened because they were trying to steal your breath, because they needed to siphon it from somewhere because they knew it was only a matter of time before everything in their world started to crumble. Many other things came to light as part of dismantling this whole power system that existed here on Earth. The entire continental divide here that goes from the Diomedes Islands all the way to the tip of South America was also a part of the network. Many different locations along that line were also tied to various mirrored versions of the original breath that was stolen. In addition to that, once those were pulled, this has just been one, it's like a little anthole, and you're like, oh, we'll just take care of that situation. That doesn't need to be there. And, then you look underneath that ant hole, and there's a whole bunch of tunnels and many, many more ants, and now you've got a whole fight on your hands, and this is what's been happening for several days now. So once we pulled that took us to another interesting location. So they consider this breath to be, in part, you would call it the sangreal. So the original blood, which is not the kind that runs through your veins, of the Melchizedek. That is what breath is. It's your original breath. It's the breath of source. Any soul that comes into being, it starts with the breath of source. You also retain that breath into infamy as life is breathed into you. Your soul is immortal. Don't forget that. They try to steal everything they can from you, but, well. So we know some interesting things now. There were protectors of the sangreal. Now, the sangreal, originally the blood of the Melchizedek line, or the Melchizedek priests, or order of the Melchizedek, as you call it, that's true. But the protection wasn't for the benefit of those people. It was for the benefit of protecting this breath. It was so critical to the survival of the dark side of the omniverse's species we call, I guess you would say, the anti-human or the non-human. It's the same thing for the deep state that takes on that within their person until they're no longer human. They're so black they can't even see the light of day. But without the attachment and the tether to the sangreal, all is lost. So now, introducing another interesting tidbit. So the sangreal is protected by a group, or was protected by a group, called the Chevalier Knights. And the Chevalier Knights aren't people. They are, let's just say, a connection to some on the other side. And that connection was formed deep in the Mariana Trench. We've been a lot of places lately. So there was a whole mechanism in there that would actually protect the sangreal so that it could power all of the dark side of the omniverse and those here, and also protect the debt system. See, that didn't actually originally belong to them now, did it? But the breath was critical for their survival. Now, to continue on, the bloodline, as the Merovingians, was formed from the sangreal. This became your royalty of the planet. For many millennia here, you know them as the royal dynasty families if you're in the East, the kings and queens of Europe. They have been in existence for a long time, many hundreds of years, in our history, thousands of years, really, when you trace it all the way back to the kings of Israel. So, you have the kings and queens of Egypt, too, at that time. And, we have a lot of stories in our history tied to varying Merovingians throughout the ages. So, once all of this mechanism was pulled and we dealt with the Chevalier Knights who were fighting us tooth and nail to get that back, really, it was quite chaotic out there. All of them had to try to fight for their survival. And, well, it's falling and falling fast. Other points of interest in areas of the world that we went to was Paraguay. Now, breath in of itself and of creation of source being also contains, you could say, an original blueprint too, of the creation of source. It's similar to the primordial directive, but this is even before that takes place. So they can't have it in its pure form, you see, because that does them no good, but it does power them to some degree. However, rewriting the language of that to create something dark, that was of the utmost importance. So that takes us to Paraguay. And in Paraguay, you could say there were a lot of language key codes that were there that would rewrite the original breath in their favor to create something of the opposite nature. Also located in Paraguay was the writing for the debt system, which we found very interesting. The mechanisms that we found in Paraguay were also tied to what's now the Gulf of America, which was the Gulf of Mexico, and also other areas around that Gulf, such as Honduras, Nicaragua, Colombia, and these were all mirrored into locations like the Himalayas. It was a complex system, and still is, a complex system that needed to be unraveled. And this is the reason why, there was no not working over the last several days. Once you pull the one little piece out and the water starts flooding everywhere, you've got to finish the job. So we've worked tirelessly to finish the job the best we could. But Paraguay also happens to be a place, in case you don't know, called the Bush Ranch. Hence the reason why all of these generals are anciently awaiting the Bush Trust, which they think is going to come from this weird mechanism underneath the Bush Ranch in Paraguay. There were a lot of computer systems at one point in time that were tied to this area in Paraguay, and a lot of weird human experiments that would also go on in the Bush Ranch. If you have never seen it, there was a series, it dates back to 2013, called 0 Hour. And 0 Hour highlights at one point something called the 41 Trust. I've mentioned this to you if you've been following for a while before. And it's a good series. There's only one season to it. But it talks about a lot of these hidden weird things, and some lady thinks she's going to give birth to the Antichrist or to the Christ, and that type of thing. It's a little crazy, but it does talk about the 12 apostles and cloning humans and lots of interesting stuff. So the Bush Ranch is no exception. Really, it's highlighted in that series. However, there are a lot of interesting things, Nazi-like experiments and things that would go on in this area. And a lot of this was tied to those language key code mechanisms that existed there and were tied to the dark side of the omniverse. So Bush, at the time, was a very heavy participant and took on something in there as well, not wholly human either anymore. And he was, so was Prescott, by the way, his father. They were very heavily involved long before the Nazi regime, long before, generation after generation. The Scherf family has been deeply involved and part of this dark bloodline of royalty that you don't see on television. For a long time. So yeah, there were certain privileges that were afforded to that family, and they believe that Trump is ready to take that over, and that's going to happen apparently on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, for those that are Jewish. And the reason why they feel the Day of Atonement, is really important to them, and that this system was going to work for them at that time, is because we are the debtors. We owe a lot of money. Not money per se, but money makers, for lack of a better term. We are the source of energy. We're the source of Ethereum. We are the source of a lot of resources that are highly regarded assets in this omniverse for the creation and the maintaining of what you would call anti-life. Now, we were tricked into this many times as the human race, or you could say the Homo sapiens, over the years. And oftentimes, it is the same modus operandi that ends up happening. There's a major catastrophic event that happens and that occurs. When that catastrophic event happens, someone, somewhere, comes in to save you and save you from death. Death being a being unto itself, and not natural either. So they come in to save you from death. And for that, you now owe them, for their protection. It's worse than the mafia. really. And most recently, I've told you the story about the time when we experienced the loss of our moon. Our moon was no longer controlling the water on this planet. Therefore, we had great floods. You remember the guy Noah, Mount Ararat, and 2x2. 2x2 didn't necessarily mean like one male and one female animal either. By 2x2, that could also mean one dark being of non-natural origin and one Homo sapien. Think about that one for a second. That's an episode unto itself of the GIA report. But nevertheless, lots of manipulation being done by the Bush family. Now, us as debtors, we now owe our saviors, our implanted saviors. That's why we caution you so much on paying attention to the savior programs, and when they try to insert a savior for you in the media, such as a president, a head of state, a military, or otherwise, because they are often saving you from themselves. They create the problem and they be the solution. That is in every agency's handbook, every military's handbook, and they know the program and protocol well because they learned from the worst, or the best, if you will. So during each one of these catastrophic Armageddon type events, apocalypse events that would happen, humans were allegedly, or Homo sapiens, and the species was saved allegedly by insert name of being here, repeatedly over and over and over again. Therefore, we are now in debt to these people, or folk, I should say, non-people people, for saving our lives and preventing us from death. Well, and this story continued on and on and on for millions of years, and here we are today, and now we're talking about credit cards and financial systems and debt systems. Therefore, it gave them the right to call upon those things. Repayment for sins, they call it, or the Day of Atonement. So they believe that they will get access to this stuff that is no longer in Paraguay, in mirrored accounts in the Cayman Islands and JP Morgan and Switzerland and other places in the world for that very reason. You see, because this year, this time is like no other that we have ever seen as Homo sapiens. Earth has never seen a time like this. We are at a critical turning point where every covenant is expiring. We are not obligated to these people anymore. We are only obligated to the Creator, Source, God, if you will. We have no debt obligations. One after the other, after the other, after the other have expired. Hence the debt system falling and being replaced with pure, direct, golden, of source currency or current directly to your person. You are now not obligated to pay that from your person. You owe no one anything. These people in the crazy deep state are hoping that something gets renewed on the Day of Atonement. Why? I have no idea. Them and their black magic, just, I don't know, and weird texts and other things that they believe that are going to take place. It's not going to happen. If they haven't realized yet that everything that they have taken, everything is going away. It's going away in such a rapid fire, one after the other, after the other, after the other. We have not stopped. As that covenant expires, we sit there and we'll wait to 12:01 UTC time or midnight or 12 noon Eastern time, and then boom, it's, oh, that's gone. Next, till everything tied to that is gone. And it's not going to take us much longer. I really thought this was going to happen this weekend. I thought we'd be done. Yeah, we're real close, I can tell you. There's not much left of that debt system. And my guess would be in the first week or two of October, there'll be nothing left. You see, without that system, without that debt system, without that backing of a financial system to a whole species of dark beings and universes, and there is no power. They have no power. And by power, I mean enough dark energy to power the person, sure. But they definitely will not be able to take it from you anymore. You now retain your power. So you can watch that crazy mainstream media news and chaos out there and all of the things and do whatever you want to do, but they still won't be able to take any of it from you. The bad part is now you have to live with it. You have to live with yourself. Because, they say you are what you eat. Well, that's your choice. And choose to live life the way you want to live it. But things are different. DC doesn't hold the power it used to hold. Being a president doesn't siphon the power like it used to. Being a general or military doesn't siphon that like it used to. The big plans, the big planning meeting, oh yeah, absolutely. Are they going to save us from themselves? Meaning they are going to create a problem, if they could afford it, and be the solution. And that is what the big meeting is all about. I know I've had a lot of people asking, what are they doing? What are they doing? What are they talking about? Well, there it is, folks. They are going to make an attempt, like of a catastrophic nature, 2x2, Noah's Ark replay, flood, fire, something or other, which they cannot do. And even if they did create a catastrophic event, I can tell you right now, it wouldn't yield them any result. We will never, never be indebted to those people ever again. It's never going to happen. We're just picking up the pieces now. It's over. It is over for these people. So they're going to set another day ending in Y. Most likely what they're talking about is dancing around until the 21st of October. And even then, nothing is going to happen. They love Halloween. That's another big day of theirs. Nothing is going to happen. Nothing. And they will go and go and go in circles, weird ritual days and whatever, until half their black magic people are dead because they're so black. Because there's nowhere to get that dark energy from. Even if you fall for what they show you, a shooting here, a big event there, they still can't get that dark energy out of you, that fear out of you anymore that it generates. Therefore, there's no support for a debt system. Therefore, the entire financial system is going to change and has changed in many, many ways. And you'll start experiencing that too. When it happens, you'll know it. Every fiber of your being will know it. The nightmares will stop. Things will be easier to manifest. Your world is going to change. And it's not just because of CARE and the organizations and things that we're doing and things we're putting together. Not just because of that, because now you'll understand who you really are. And people will start to wake up. It will get better, I promise you. And we're not too far away from that. So on that note, take care of yourselves. It's bumpy. It is bumpy. They're not going down without a fight, that's for sure. And this is going to be an interesting week, as they find out that it's all a lie. It is all a lie. And you find out more of the truth. So on that note, that has been the GIA report for the 29th of September. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your patience this week. I thoroughly appreciate you and all your support, and of course all your birthday wishes, and hopefully it's going to be one heck of a ride in the next week or so. So on that note, I will see you later on this week, and have a wonderful rest of your Monday or Tuesday, if that's the day it is where you're at.